Hello everyone and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. Many booktubers are momentarily publishing their 2024 Mid Year Book Freak-OutTag videos. Now that I've been reading fantasy for 1.5 years, I believe I can join this tag without making too much of a fool of myself. However, some of the questions are hardly relevant because I'm such a newbie to the genre. Like the questions about new releases, I'm too much occupied at the moment with reading and discovering that new releases are not important, as of yet. Especially when I discover a new author, I try to read her or his works in their publication order. Because being a writer myself, I'm always interested in how a writer develops during his or her career. So I'll skip the questions about new releases. The other question that doesn't seem very relevant to this reader is the most beautiful book I've bought this year. To me, books are not meant to be beautiful objects. I am a collector of content and imagination. In whatever packaging that content is wrapped remains secondary to me. I really like to see booktubers gush about their broken binding purchases or rather beautiful books they've bought. And I don't mean any disrespect to the value of a beautiful book, but I am most happy with a floppy paperback or mass paperback, which spines easily crack. A hardcover is clumsy to hold and to read, so give me a cheap paperback anytime. To me, a book almost becomes more valuable when it has visibly been read, with underlinings inside, notes, and a battered outside. That book has been lived, and its content has taken a place within my experience. Like this one, A Memory of Light, the last book in the Wheel of Time series, which I read. As you can see, it's completely cracked. I've done a lot of underlining in here. It's got character. In total, I have 10 questions for this tag. With all that being said, let's look back at the last 6 months of reading. How has your 2024 reading year gone so far? Very good. I've read 35 books so far. 22 fantasy, science fiction, 6 children's books, 1 Dutch literary novel, and 6 non-fiction books. The average rating of all these books is 80 points out of 100, which compares to 4 stars. I DNF'd only 1 book, so altogether I'm having a great reading year so far. Which books have you rated 5 stars? I rarely give 5 stars to a book, but it happens. Let me first answer a question viewers often ask me. How does my rating system work? I rate books within the range of 1 to 100 points, which gives me ample room to nuance my rating. To me, the one book with a 4-star rating is not the same as another with the same 4-star rating. Within the 4-star range, I can nuance between 76 and 85 points. Let me clarify this by taking 2 4-star books I read this year. Dragonflight by McCaffrey was a great read, which I gave 85 points out of 100. But I also enjoyed The We Free Men by Terry Pratchett. But by giving this one 78 points out of 100, I can specify that I liked Dragonflight better, even though both books score 4 stars. Here you can see how my 1 to 100 points compare to the star ratings. To say that my star rating truly is a system would be misleading. It is just the points without any system behind it, really. Many other booktubers treat this much more systematically. For instance, Daniel from Digger Dan Reads has a real system behind his rating, where he separately rates 5 different categories: emotional impact, characters, plot, dialogue and prose, and world building. When I finish reading a book, I give it a gut feeling rating, and when I do my video on a book, I check if that rating still holds up. I make a quick comparison with other books and verify if my rating indeed does compare. That's when I give a book my final rating, which usually deviates just a few points at most from my initial rating. So no system, but plenty of room to differentiate between the various books. For a book to be a true 5-star read, it has to acquire 96 points or more. This doesn't happen very often. A 5-star, in my eyes, is a truly very exceptional book. And those are rare. In fact, these past 5.5 to 6 months resulted in only 3 genuine 5-star books for me. This doesn't mean that I've had a bad reading year so far, quite the contrary. My lowest rating was 60 points, which still means 3 stars. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke is leading the pack so far. Dungeon Quest by William Horwood also scored 98 points out of 100, but this is a reread, which I listened to on audio. So if I had to pick one, it would be Piranesi. The third 5-star book scored 96 points out of 100. It is a novel by a Dutch author, Leon de Winter, called De Stad van de Honden, The City of Dogs. Leon de Winter is an automatic author for me. This book is an amazing story of a near-death experience by a renowned brain surgeon. In my eyes, it is a true masterpiece. I may still do a separate video on this book simply because it deserves the attention. Best sequel you've read so far in 2024? That would have to be Dungeon Quest then, by William Horwood. The other sequel I read so far was Dragon Quest by Anne McCaffrey, a very good book which scored 84 points out of 100. But it really doesn't compare to the splendor and depth of this harsh but beautiful tale about moles, which was published back in 1988. Biggest disappointment? My only DNF of this year so far. It's the first volume of a series of 6 called Life and Teaching of the Masters of the East by Baird Spalding. Sometimes I get inspired by one of the spiritual books my wife reads. Most of the time that is a direct hit for me as well. Like this year I read Journey of Souls by Michael Newton and What If This Is Heaven by Anita Mojani, both very special books. Only this time it was a complete miss. This book was originally published in 1924, and it tells the story of this Western man who is part of a research party that visits the Himalayas. In a very irritating, haughty writing style, the author tries to convince the reader of the miraculous powers of the people he meets, and it is all about Jesus and Christianity. Very edifying and not credible. So after about 50 pages, I put the book down. Nothing wrong with Jesus or Christianity, but when a writer tries too hard to convince me of anything that he or she perceives as an absolute truth, I get out. It was really disappointing because I'd been looking very much forward to this whole series. Biggest surprise? I think I'm going to go with The Gathering Storm, the first Brandon Sanderson book in the Wheel of Time. I had finished the previous book, Knife of Dreams, in November of 2023, after a break of 3 months from the series. Even though I'd heard only good things about how Brandon Sanderson had finished this epic series, it still caught me off guard how incredibly good this book is. I'm one of those readers who did experience the slog in the middle. And for this book to pick up the pace and the intrigue of the story the way it does was a great relief and a more than welcome continuation. Favorite new author? I've read 11 new authors this year so far, and although Susanna Clarke really deserves all the credits here, I've only read this one book of hers. At this moment, I am reading the second book in the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown. The first book wasn't altogether great for me, although I enjoyed it very much. This second book really raises my appreciation for this author. But again, even though Booktube is adamant in stating that his work only gets better, I've only read this much of this writer. So, my answer here is Anne McCaffrey. I've read 6 of her books in the Dragon Riders of Pern series, and my ratings for these books vary from 77 to 92 points. I've bought all the other books she wrote in this series, as well as one of her science fiction trilogies, so she's definitely one of my favorite new authors. Newest fictional crush. A crush is too big a word here, but I was certainly impressed by a couple of female characters. First, I want to mention Ciri from Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. She is so unconventional and finds her way into this completely new world for her of gods and colours without faltering too much. I also enjoyed reading about Lady Elienne from Sorcerer's Legacy by Jenny Wirtz. But my absolute winner here is Meneley, who makes her true appearance in Dragon Song, the first book of the Harper trilogy in the Dragon Riders of Pern. Her harsh childhood did not stifle her talents nor her intelligence. Lovely to see how, without truly realizing the wonder of it, she impresses 9 fire lizards, no less. Newest favorite character. Piranesi should win this trophy, and Lamora also deserves credit here. I even considered mentioning Daft Woolly here from Terry Pratchett's Tiffany Aching sequence. He is one of the Knack McFeagle, and everything he says, especially during his dialogues with Rob Anybody, are hilariously funny. But I will choose Darrow from Red Rising. He is a sort of Fitz Farseer who gets beaten and then beaten again, but he still finds the strength to go on and fight evil. The faith in his almost impossible task to battle on towards a better world is admirable. There is much relativism in Darrow, which results every time in recognizing what truly matters, what it's truly worth to keep on fighting for. Books that made you cry. The only book that managed to do that to me, again, was Duncton Quest by William Horwood. There were some very gripping scenes in the 3 final Wheel of Time books, but they did not bring me to tears. The many moments from the main characters Tryphon and Mayweed in Duncton Quest did. As is also happening again in Duncton Found, the final book in this trilogy that I'm listening to right now. Books that made you happy. 2 Terry Pratchett books made me very happy. The Wee Free Man and The Light Fantastic, which is the second one in the Discworld series. Happy in the sense that they made me laugh and made me see the parody of real life. Also, the Millie Molly Mandy books by Joyce Lancaster Brisley made me happy, in the sense that they showed me how the completely innocent and danger-free world of a child in rural England a century ago looked like. Very lovely books that, even though I rated all of them only 60 points out of 100, still made a lasting impression on me. So these are my 10 questions. Did you read some of the books I've read, and what did they mean for you? Love to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.